What's going on, guys? Another week of Mid-State Sports Corner. I'm Brett with two T's. Got my counterpart over here, Brett with one T. How's it going this week?
What's up? What's up?
Another good week as far as Detroit Lions go. Another big victory, especially this one. This was I think their biggest game of the year so far, and it was a comeback victory twice. Had to come back twice to get that dub.
Well, you could look at it a couple ways. You look at it as they came back twice, so they lost two 11-point leads in the
Yes.
second half, as was alluded on the screen there. So, like you said, toughest game they've had so far this season, but they held strong. And good teams have to be able to take a couple of punches in the mouth, and be resilient and come back, and that's exactly what the Lions did.
I wasn't able to catch like the first part of the game, but it looked like Minnesota came out firing pretty quickly.
Yeah, 10-0 right out of the gate, and it wasn't really because the Lions were playing necessarily bad. They came out with a lot of energy. The crowd was really into it, and as you know, that stadium gets nuts. You know what I mean? The way it's kind of constructed, that upward structure, so it gets really rowdy really quick, and the team was feeding off it and playing well, and the Lions just had to kind of sustain that, which that's expected for a big game like this on the road. But they did just that, and boy, did they ever come back with a vengeance. 21 straight points after that.
Yeah, it was once the game got settled in a little bit, and and the offense started churning a little bit. The defense got a couple stops.
Mm-hmm.
That was like the huge turning point for sure. And I think what fired him up pretty good was Gibbs having a game.
Gibbs is he's a bottle rocket, man. Like, I mean, it looks to me like when you watch him on TV, once he gets the ball and he finds a small gap, it's literally like somebody shot him out of a cannon. And I know that term seems used a lot, for guys that are quick like that. But I don't know of a better way to describe it because, I mean, he literally runs by everybody. Nobody even has any chance at catching him, and to have that, and then you got to turn around and then try and stop Montgomery, who just literally trucks everybody he runs into. Like that, no wonder the defensive lines can't hold up. And as the game wears on, the Lions get better at running the ball. That's kind of how that mentality is supposed to work. You wear your opponent down. Yes, you might only get 2 to 3 yards per carry in the first half, but as they take 40 to 50 snaps, consistently stopping the run, and obviously some passes the Lions mix in very well. But like after a while, it wears the team down, and the Lions have so many damn weapons. If you try and double somebody, you're just going to find somebody else. I mean, you cannot one-on-one any of these guys, and yet you have to.
You see, it was. I feel like we talk about this every week too, where Gibbs breaks off a run where you're like, that's the best run he's had all year.
Yeah.
But this one, his first touchdown run, the long one, I did hear it on the broadcast. That was the longest run of his career.
45 yards.
And it was, obviously, he broke through a couple tackles at the line, and then you got him in the open space, and he made that juke in open space, and he was just gone.
Yeah.
It's just,
nobody can catch him.
He's getting more and more impressive every week. And he's more of like the finesse back, but he's added so much strength to his running where he's just a one-horse motor, and he's just going and going and going. And it was a great day for him to have a day like that because, unfortunately, Montgomery didn't have the best game for sure.
Yeah, hurt.
Yeah, I think that did hobble him for the rest of the game because when that happened, second quarter-ish?
I thought it was third. Could have been second, third quarter. I know he got kneed in the back of the knee is what Dan Campbell said, and it just kind of, roughed him up a little. I think they said it'd be okay.
He did say he was going to be okay today in his press conference. But that definitely, with that happening and then the fumble in the fourth quarter, you could tell it wasn't his day. And that's okay. And that's why you have the 1-2 punch.
That's why you have all the weapons.
Yes.
That, when he's not having a day, you don't have to rely on him. And teams get that, to get too one-dimensional. And when that guy's not performing, they don't perform. And that's the best part is this team could turn around and then go, well, all right, I'd say maybe we go to Jameson Williams, let's go to Sam Laporta, and Laporta's hobbled, right? Like Montgomery's hobbled, Laporta's hobbled. They don't have their start. Their backup guard came in with 2 penalties in the first drive. I think we got flagged 3 times for holding in the first quarter.
And to go up with that, Minnesota also got flagged 3 times. It was, I think there was like 6 or 7 total penalties in the first quarter alone. And that's just, that's where you seem like the Lions couldn't get in a groove because the flow of the game was just so many whistles, so many flags. Lions couldn't get in the flow to start the game, it seemed like. And that's when the game finally started to settle down a little bit is when they started to catch their groove.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and our offensive line did not playing particularly well. I mean, if you look at like PFF, and all of that, I mean, our Glasgow was down. Ragnow had a Ragnow game, but like we had a backup guard and he didn't have very good marking.
Decker got burned a few times.
Decker got burned. Decker was on the bottom of the charts for the game. Like, was not our line's best game, and yet Jahmyr Gibbs goes out and runs like he did. I mean, that speaks to him as well. It's not just the line. The line gets a lot of credit, and rightfully so. They're the best in the league, in my opinion. But, you also have to have skilled backs that can find the gaps that you do create for them. I mean, how many times have we seen, major holes and the running back decides to run through the pile? I mean, it happens all the damn time because it may not have the perfect vision. And I think that's the best part about this combination is that both of these guys have really, really solid vision when it comes to finding those gaps and hitting them, when they need to or making a cut when they need to. And, it's an all-around team game. I mean, it's incredible to me this team can possibly get better. I don't understand.
I agree with your point of, like, it definitely wasn't the Lions' best game, especially offensive line didn't have their best game for sure. Obviously, Montgomery didn't play the best. Jameson Williams didn't. He had a great game blocking, but as far as receiving goes, he had a tough game.
Yeah.
But they still pull out the victory, and obviously against a good Minnesota team who's been playing very well.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't not talk about this again. Jared Goff with another very, very impressive, clean game.
Yeah.
22 for 25, and he was I think he was 20 for 21 at one point.
Yeah, he had like 18, 19 completions in a row or something like that. It was crazy. I mean, he's. I know I saw something today that shows he's over 80% completions in the last 4 games.
Yeah, he's on a roll in these last 4 games.
MVP conversation.
And what was
has
it was
to be.
and this is coming off this. I think this started with the Arizona game, so it was the game prior. So the game they lost to Tampa, where he didn't obviously had the rough game there.
Yeah,
and then he's just reeled off this run here, coming off the only loss, and that's what you want under center of your team.
Well, I mean, if you're gonna go out and play your worst game against Tampa and lose like they did, right? I mean, which, they could have played a lot worse. They didn't play great, but they could have played a lot worse. But if that's the worst game you put on tape this year, I'm totally fine with it. I mean, this team has got it. This team really does. I mean, you can tell they're so unified. They all share a common goal here, and you can tell they just absolutely love playing for Coach Campbell. And really, I mean, it's it's been a couple years in the making. Obviously, that 2021 draft, a lot of those guys have now been rewarded with extensions. Ali McNeil recently getting his share of the pie, almost $100 million guaranteed there. You know what I mean? So it's a testament to how this organization has been built foundationally, right? And these guys are now growing up, if you will, maturing a little bit, getting their deals, but being supplemented with continual good drafts. And now this entire roster, for the most part, is all Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes' people, right? And like it's they don't go out and sign the big names on the market. How many times have they been involved in that since this regime took over?
Mm-hmm.
Never, right? Like Montgomery was a big signing just because it was like the biggest deal they'd done, right? But if you look at it in terms of the media's eyes, they didn't really think much of it. And boy, I'm glad that Chicago gave up on him because you can have DeAndre Swift and his 2 yards a carry. Like Montgomery's been a blessing for this team, and I think we've been a blessing for Montgomery as well.
Mm-hmm. One thing I want to add is the offense definitely, the second quarter, they blew up. And then coming out of the gates in the third quarter, they had a great run too. But then they stalled a little bit. They stalled like halfway through the third quarter, and then they stalled majority of the fourth quarter where Minnesota's defense was picking up because they had 4 straight drives where they got points or they got touchdowns nonetheless.
Right.
And then they stalled out. But then in gut check time, you got to make a run down the field. You're down by 1.
Mm-hmm.
And they put together an impressive offensive drive where every play was positive yardage, and it was good chunk yardage too, nonetheless.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I mean, again, like just to reiterate, I mean, Minnesota came out and kicked them right in the teeth in the first couple drives, right? And old Lion teams that pass obviously would have faltered. Obviously not what we're talking about this team is, but old Lions teams would absolutely said, screw it, we'll hang around as long as we can and maybe try a fourth quarter comeback to make it interesting. But other than that, But this team, nope, they decided to come right back and run the ball again, down by 10. Gibbs breaks off a 20, 30-yard run, whatever the hell it was, 40-yard run now. And
then he took like a screen pass for another,
he did.
another 20.
And he pretty much pulled that whole drive on his shoulders and said, all right, we're going to go back and get some of these points back. And they really didn't stop. Like I said, they scored 21 unanswered. And, this game, although the score was close, I really felt like the Lions held their own much better. Once Minnesota got hit back from the Lions, they really started to cower a tad. Again, I know the score got a little bit closer than maybe it felt like in the game, but this team, I mean, after watching San Francisco play, they've lost Ayuk for the year with a torn ACL and MCL.
Debo's out for a while now.
Debo's out. McCaffrey.
Kittle's out again.
Kittle's out again. Like I just don't know that they're going to be the team again. Can they get healthy in 10 weeks? I mean, absolutely. And they can turn around and beat San Francisco again. But these games in the middle matter, and whether they sneak in or not, like I don't know that they're the same that they were. So I think it's the prime spot for the Lions to take control of this league, the NFC.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I do want to ask you, how did you feel about when they were on that last drive when they went and kicked the field goal? They were sitting there at second and like 9 or something like that, and their offense was driving pretty good. And I understood both sides of it. But how did you feel about them taking the 2 knees, albeit Minnesota still had timeouts to use? They took the 2 knees, let the clock dwindle down to 19 seconds, and then go for the field goal. How did you feel about that?
Well, after watching Miami blow that up last year against Georgia Tech when they were up by 2 points, and Mario Cristobal decided, you know what, I'm going to run the ball to run the clock down instead of just taking a knee, and watch them fumble and Georgia Tech scoop and score and win the game. Those things do happen in football.
Mm-hmm.
Crazier things have happened in football, and those kinds of games can derail a season for a number of reasons. Record-wise, it would not derail the season, right? And to be very clear, I don't think this coaching staff would allow these things to happen. I'm saying for other organizations. But you go out and you lose a game like that, where essentially you call the ordinary shots, right, and you win the game, and you go out and lose that game. All of a sudden, people start questioning your decision making. You go to kick it next time, they're going to question it, and that stuff starts to snowball, and then you bring doubt into the program. And that's the last thing a coach needs is doubt. They need full buy-in from all of their policies, defensive, offensive, special teams. And the minute you start to include doubt in there anywhere, it's cancerous, and it spreads. And that's the last thing they needed, right? So, the announcers were going a little crazy on the way that they ended the game, with kneeing and all of that, and not hustle into the line. And, remember Olsen going like, man, they should get in field goal range before they start taking their time. And, I could hear the argument for that, but I trust how this offense is ran. I trust the personnel know what the hell they needed to get done in that moment, and they went out and did it. And at the end of the day, winning is what mattered.
Yeah. I just get super nervous when you go, like, you exhaust all your options, and literally the kick is your only option.
Yeah.
And it's just nerve-wracking. Because look at it in hindsight like this. Say your offense was rolling to get to that point, and then you're going to, all right, we're going to play it safe, and we're going to go for the kick. And then he misses the kick. And then you're like, why the hell would you do that? Your offense was doing just fine.
I mean, but
there's just so many avenues to go. Obviously, it worked out.
Sure.
But there's just so many avenues. That's what made me nervous about it. It's just like, man, our offense was rolling with so much momentum. Like, I feel like you could have at least tried for the end zone or something.
Well, and also keep in mind, too, that, if you ask Dan Campbell, what he would do there, right? It's like he'd tell you not to put yourself in that position to begin with.
Well, yeah, true.
Don't put yourself in position to lose or win the game on the last kick or the last touchdown. Like, you go out there and soundly beat your opponent. And really, again, against good opponents like this, you don't expect blowouts or even 2-score games, quite frankly. But I think there was in a couple opportunities, Lions to bury him a little further.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it worked out just fine. But, they're not a perfect team. There's no such thing as a perfect team. They're going to have their flaws. And, again, they're going to have guys that, being banged up right now may not be themselves. I mean, I was good to see Amon-Ra get over 100 yards. I was happy to see that. He's been a little quieter this season. I mean, he's been doing a lot of the gritty stuff. Blocking. God, he's been blocking a lot.
All the receivers,
man, they buy in a lot.
They block like crazy.
Yeah, they do. And it's amazing because it's what sets up these 20, 25-yard, 30-yard runs all the time that just defeat opponents.
Or-
I mean, third down runs of 20 yards will just break a defense.
Well, they're really good about getting yards after catch too. It's one thing
Yeah.
I've really noticed.
The
But
yak.
back to I do have one more thing that I add to the whole taking the knee and doing the field goal thing.
Okay.
Do you think I think Montgomery fumbling that ball, and it was clearly that Metellus was going for to knock that ball out, and you know damn well if they do it once, they're going to try it again. Do you think that was in the back of his head of like, well, they've already gotten one, so we're not going to try and risk it again?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that swayed to the decision of taking those two knees and said, all right, we're just going to go for the kick?
Well, again, you could dissect this a lot of ways. I mean,
I see it definitely having a play in it for sure.
yeah, Jake Bates is a good kicker, right? I mean, like he's been electric since we've signed him, and he's been on our squad. We've also been blessed with a lot of good kickers. Jason Hansen scored more points in NFL in Lions history than anybody. At least you could go out and get a couple points from him. Prater right after that. So they've been very blessed with good kickers, and Jake Bates is no different. But yeah, I mean, I can understand the frustration of putting all your eggs in one basket because, I mean, the other team knows what the hell you're doing too. So really, I mean, if they find a way to break through the line or they do a good stunt drill, like Brian Flores is no weak-ass defensive coordinator. Like, he's a very good defensive coordinator. Good, regardless of your opinions about him, he knows how to coach defense, and that's been well documented. But Ben Johnson knows how to call offense, and that was the great battle yesterday. And sometimes Flores' schemes won, and sometimes Johnson's won.
There was one thing about the kick, though. I saw one of the Minnesota players, like, hurdle the line and almost get back there. I thought that was a penalty. Or is that a college rule?
I think it's just in college. I mean, I guess I'm not 100% on that, to be honest.
Because I definitely have heard that penalty be called before, of hurdling the line.
Yeah, but I don't know when it's acceptable and not acceptable.
Yeah, that's what kind of threw me. And then, obviously, Minnesota getting the ball back, and then they run up and spike the ball, but then they get a penalty at the same time, and they still get a play out of it. Someone did post something of, like, these are the penalties that occur at a runoff.
Mm-hmm.
But you feel like that would be it. So it's almost like they purposely lined up in that formation just to make sure they give themselves that extra play.
Well, in Minnesota let me tell you something. Minnesota had a chance to go out and win that game themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they really did. They had the ball late. They went 3-0.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, Darnold had a chance to go and secure that game, quite frankly. And would anybody been surprised if Minnesota won the game either? Not really.
Well, when they had that scoop and score on Montgomery's fumble, they had the chance to get the 2-point conversion, go up by a full field goal. So then that would have that kick would have been sending the game to overtime.
Right. Well, and I think, the biggest thing too is like Sam Darnold is although he's played well this year, is not a good quarterback. He's just not. Okay, so I think the Lions rattled him. I really do. I think that's what happened. I think the Lions really messed with his mojo, and I think that they got him to a point where he was no longer as confident as he was essentially in those first couple games, and that's a credit to how they played. The linebacking core for the Lions yesterday was phenomenal, but Brian Branch was my player of the game. Brian Branch was all over, not just because of the interception. Dude was all over.
Field.
I mean, and quite frankly, he had another one that was taken back, like that fumble recovery for a touchdown. I mean, it's incredible to me they got him as late as they did because he was projected to go early first round all day long. And somehow he slipped. He was the only one left in the draft room, if you remember, after day one. And, came back and the Lions took him early, and he's been a dog ever since. And, it's like I said, some of these guys are in year 2. I mean, players don't typically mature until, 5-6 years in the league? I mean, these guys are going to get better somehow. It's really incredible.
Did you kind of notice this? Do you think they actually, because you mentioned the linebackers, because of the loss of Hutch, do you think they threw the linebackers in on a rush, on the rush with the front four more often to add more pressure because they don't have the Hutch pressure anymore?
Well, they had to try and do something.
Because I saw Campbell got back there a couple times. Rodriguez was back there a few times.
But the D-line itself did not get pressure nearly what it did with Hutch. And that's obvious. I mean, you're replacing the best defensive lineman in football. I mean, that's, you know what I mean? Like, that's That's impossible, quite frankly. And you can do whatever you want, as far as scheme wise or even personnel wise. But like, you're not replacing the best defensive lineman in football, guys. I'm sorry. And I think they handled very well. And like I said, the linebackers played phenomenal. They had a ton of coverages where the guy may have caught the ball, but he was brought down immediately. He didn't get 5-10 yards after catch. So, again, really, really credit to Aaron Glenn and how he coached that defense yesterday. I was really, really impressed with how they did game 1 after Aiden.
And I think, given the whole season so far, that was probably the better offense they've seen. Because Aaron Jones had himself a pretty good game. Even Sam Darnold had himself a pretty good game. If you look at Darnold's stat line, he had a pretty good game. He had one very similar to Jared Goff, but he did have the interception, and he took a couple timely sacks. So, but you look at it on Justin Jefferson. Obviously, did Justin Jefferson things, and yeah, like I said, Aaron Jones had that big run for a touchdown in the first quarter, and Sam Darnold protected the ball quite well, aside from that interception.
I got to tell you, the way the game kind of started, I thought Aaron Jones was going to have a classic Aaron Jones day against the Lions there for a moment. Like, he looked good. He did. And Aaron Jones is a good player. I mean, he is. And I don't like him because he was on the Packers, right? Whatever. He's still on a division rival. Can't like him that much. But, I've always, I think he's been a very solid football player. And I thought for sure he was going to go off yesterday. And, the Lions definitely kind of bottled that whole situation up, a lot better as the game progressed. Again, it was just a battle of coordinators, quite frankly. And, we just happened to win that game. But, you're going to have your guys like Justin Jefferson's going to go out and catch. He's going to go out and catch a few. He's probably one of the best receivers in football. You have to tip your cap to good players. And those guys are good players. That's just how it is. And so, even their defensive lineman, I can't remember his name offhand, but the Lions had like 3 holding penalties against him alone. And it was like, obviously this guy's doing what he's got to be doing because we have to hold him to stop him. And so they're 5-1 for a reason, right? Like they're not slouches. So, we have to play our best ball cumulatively, not individually, but cumulatively. So if one guy's faltering, requires another step up, and you're missing a guy from injury, requires another step up or another position group to step up. And I do think that the Lions secondary and linebacking core specifically did just that for us. I really do.
Did you see the report that the Lions have been inquiring to teams about an edge rusher?
No, haven't seen that at all.
Yeah, I read that
haven't seen
yesterday.
it. Yeah,
that the Lions have contacted a few teams.
Yeah,
which
obviously.
to no surprise.
Obviously,
they're probably just kicking some tires and seeing
yes,
what's.
I've seen that 100 times.
They're probably just kicking some tires, see what's going on, see what's the market looking like, and
it's not going to be Max Crosby. It's not going to be Hassan Reddick at this point. Hassan Reddick did sign a deal with the Jets officially, negotiated that, and he's at camp, or not at camp, I'm sorry, he's at practice now.
Yeah, camp was like 2 months ago.
Yeah, he's at practice now. I think he $12 million incentives. He was able to earn back all of his fines and stuff. So, boost for the Jets, but they still got Aaron Rodgers and they're trash. So I'm not really worried about them.
They did get Adams and
they proceeded to lose to the Steelers with Adams on the roster. So they're 2-5.
Yeah,
2-5.
True.
Are you worried about the Jets?
Why would I be? They're in the
there
AFC.
We go. Just in general. No. You think they make the playoffs?
Oh God, no.
No. So whatever.
At this point, I really don't know who's like. Obviously, your top dogs, but other than that, I don't really know who else is going to make the playoffs this year.
On either
side.
On either side.
On either side.
I mean,
because obviously you got the Chiefs, and that's. I haven't really looked at the standings too much of what else is going on. Oh, Bills. Yeah, the Bills are off to a good start, and obviously they brought in Amari Cooper, which I think is really going to help that offense.
Well, yeah. I mean, he got him for nothing, less than $1 million. I think it was like $800,000 because of contract restructure that he did earlier in the year. And I mean, you get him for less than $1 million. I mean, yeah, all day long. Like I'm all about that. Miami's supposed to get Tua back this week. Tua's planning to play and with no guardian cap. That's ridiculous. I thought his career should be done. Personally.
Yeah, I think so too. At this point I think he's coming back too early.
Yeah, and to to touch base on the edge rushers thing, like Cincinnati, they're now 3-4. They were 1-4. They're 3-4 now. They've won 2 in a row, and Trey Henderson's not going anywhere now. I mean, essentially, had they lost those 2, and went to like 1-6, I think Hendrickson's on the table personally. But they've now won a couple. They're back in it. Obviously, that can shift here in the next month, but I don't see that happening. Cleveland's a disaster. I mean, losing Watson's probably, honestly, like performance-wise, good for them. Obviously, you never want to see that happen to anybody.
Yeah.
You know, seeing an injury like that, and I was really classless of the fans to cheer that.
That's Ohio for you.
It's a what?
That's Ohio for you.
Yeah, I get it. Well, and that's not that surprising for that group of fans, but it's a damn shame. You know, and then again, you get to like Baltimore, obviously in the AFC, all that stuff. Like they're good, you know. So the AFC's, I think there's a couple of good teams there, but the NFC is a crapshoot. I mean, Washington, I think is going to make it. I really do. Obviously,
Jane Daniels out a couple weeks now.
Yeah, but I still think they make it. I really do. I think they make it. I do think 3 teams from the North are going to make it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean,
I do not think Chicago ends up being one of them.
I'd be surprised if there isn't 3 teams from the North.
Yeah,
I'd be totally surprised. Tampa, I mean, Atlanta's still kind of sneakily still right there, but I would say Tampa's got the overall better roster. Tampa's actually about to be on right now on Monday Night Football, so we'll get a little look at them. But and then obviously we touched on San Francisco having more injury issues again, and they got mollywopped by Kansas City yesterday, and Seattle's They did win yesterday. They went on a little bit of streak after losing the Lions, but they did win yesterday. So they are actually 2 up in that division right now.
Well, look at the NFC West. I mean, the leaders, Seattle at 4-3.
Yeah.
You know, and like, but you know, Geno Smith is the passing leader for the NFL, but it doesn't look like it's translating.
But
and Jared Goff,
DK Metcalf's out for a little bit now too.
Jared Goff's over here going under the radar in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean,
and that's exactly how you'd want it.
That's how you'd want it. I mean, the Lions got a plus 62 point differential. Minnesota's at 61.
But look at the whole North. Green Bay's at plus 43. Chicago's plus 47.
The New York Giants at negative 50. God, they're
Go
so
look at
bad.
Carolina.
What's Carolina's? How bad? Oh my God, 133 points under. Son of a gun. Well, that's awful.
It's just
that's pitiful. The AFC East is no good either, except for the Bills. I mean, nobody else's point differential is any good there.
I mean, you could give the Bills the division crown at this point already.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's 4 games up already, 3 games up already. I mean, but you know, I mean, it's just to me, like I've watched obviously plenty of other teams out there. You know, this season, just as most of you will probably have. I don't know that there's any team out there that's as good and deep as the Lions. I mean, they just.
It would be San Francisco if they're healthy. It would be.
That's kind of been their problem, though.
What do you mean?
They haven't been healthy for years, if you think about it.
They only get healthy at the right times.
Yeah.
And they still somehow. So, but I think this year, I think it's really taking a toll on them this year for sure.
Well, yeah. And, you know, eventually that bill always comes due. You know what I mean? Like, whether it be contracts, whether it be health, both. And they've had their chances at a Super Bowl for like the last decade, on and off with a few years, but like they've had their opportunities to go in there and win a Super Bowl, been to the game twice, lost it both times. So
to the same team.
Right. So it's like, I mean, you know, you can be upset about it, but at the same time, it's like you got to win in your window, right? Because the windows aren't open forever.
And considering how much these guys are getting hurt, like McCaffrey's been notoriously hurt his whole career. He's been hurt a lot throughout his whole career. I mean, Debo, wasn't he out for a little bit last year too? Or is that Ayuk I'm thinking of? No, Ayuk was on a holdout to start this year.
Yes.
I feel like Debo was out for a little bit last year.
Well, they've all been hurt. I mean, McCaffrey's, like I said, aside from, like, what was it last year? I want to say he's always been hurt.
Yeah.
You know, Purdy was down with that UCL injury. Bosa's obviously missed time over the years. Fred Warner has missed time. You know, the list goes on and on.
Either way, they better pick it up, or it's gonna get to the point where it's too far back, or it's too big of a hill to climb. So,
well, they're very well coached, you know, and I've said this before. Like, I do believe that damn near any quarterback out there could probably go into Shanahan's offense and succeed to an extent. Now, personnel-wise, right now, there ain't many options for that quarterback to throw to. Purdy, obviously. But again, it's hard for me to doubt them. It really is hard for me to doubt them. And I think that, more than anything, I think that this NFC is like it's got two. I mean, it's got San Francisco and the Lions and everybody else. And I don't think there's many pundits out there that are gonna tell you that anybody has got a leg up than the Lions right now. And it slightly makes me nervous just because we don't have experience doing this before. But I do trust this organization's got us heading in the right direction, and I think that we've drafted so damn well, and we've also had a lot of picks to use, which San Francisco is not. So when you do lose guys like this, your depth pieces, they're not 100% of your starters, but if they're 85%, your team kind of holds afloat, right? It treads water. You win a game, you lose a game. You win a game, you lose a game. And then as your stars come back the last 5 weeks of the year, you might win 4 out of 5 or 3 out of 5, right, to get in. And then anything can happen in the playoffs. I don't care what seed you are. It's always been well documented. But just unfortunate rash injuries, and it can happen to anybody. Lions aren't exactly healthy either. They're missing some big names too, man.
Well, we're creeping up on halfway point of the season here. So we're at week 7. Next week is week 8. So and I was 17 games, or I would say week 8 is halfway point.
Yeah.
So as the playoff picture sits at the moment, I know this doesn't really matter, but it's kind of cool to look at. Your Detroit Lions, number 1 seed in the NFC.
Yeah, it's good.
And Commanders actually would have the 2 seed currently.
Unbelievable.
So those 2 would get the byes, and then you would get Tampa, Green Bay, and Seattle, Minnesota. Those would be the 2 wildcard matchups.
Do you want a bye week if you're the Lions?
I'd like to see where the injuries lie when that time comes.
How they're playing at that time.
Well, you look at it. No, did they? No, they played the Cowboys last week. I was like, but they came out of the bye week after the Cowboys game, just played their best game of the year.
Yeah.
So
I'm not saying the coach staff can't do it. I'm just asking in general. You know how that goes. Sometimes
yeah,
we
talked about the bye week.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know. I would like to see where the injuries are at that point, because say Kirby Joseph is banged up, Jahmyr Gibbs is banged up, Montgomery's banged up. Yeah, give them that extra week to get those little small nagging injuries to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
And get them fresh and ready to go.
Yeah, and obviously the report came out, in the last couple days that, Hutchinson, as far as his leg goes, did not suffer nerve damage, blood vessel damage, or any cartilage or structural damage other than the bone breaking.
It was literally just a clean break of the bone.
Clean break, best possible scenario given the circumstances. And if there's anybody that's going to come back early, it's going to be him.
Yep.
So they're looking at more of the 4-month timeline versus 4 to 6.
I've seen this 1,000 times.
Yeah.
He could play the Super Bowl if the Lions make it that far.
Yeah, and it's I'm a little torn, right? I mean, I guess I'd like to see
this would
how
be a
he
good
looks
discussion
in a couple weeks before the Super Bowl.
So say they do get there.
Yeah.
And Hutch is ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
Would you slot him in?
If he's ready to go, he changes the game.
Do you think after being off this whole time, especially with that kind of injury?
It's going to depend on when he's back on his feet. It's not going to depend on what he did the week before necessarily. It's going to say, okay, if he's been walking, let's say, and again, these are not realistic timelines at all. I've done no research on exactly what the exact timeline is, but if he's walking by mid-November, right? Let's just say
that's only a couple weeks away.
Dude. Right, I get it. Right, I'm just giving you a universe to imagine.
I would say the earliest he would be able to start walking without assistance would be Christmas time.
I'm not talking with or without assistance. I'm just saying in general. Like, think about the progressions, right? So he's gonna start walking, right? Mid-November, major assistance. Okay, let's just say
he'll probably.
I got a month of that where you got crutches or some immobilizer, some combination of both, right? And as the weeks progress, you lose a little bit of assistance, here throughout. And you get to January 1. And now you're at a spot where you can walk and jog on your own, let's just say, right? That really only gives you a month, maybe 5 weeks, to strengthen, condition that leg and prepare for the explosive pass rush that is Aiden Hutchinson. Now,
if anyone could do it, it would be him.
You're damn right. I was just going to say, I'm not doubting the man. If anybody could do it, I'm all for it. I'd love to see him in the game. He deserves to be in the game, in my opinion. He's what helped get us here. I don't know that it's enough time. I just don't know if it's enough time.
That's exactly where my mind's at with it.
Yeah.
Is like, I don't, say they do get to that point, and yeah, of course it is all hands on deck. It's the Super Bowl.
Well,
like it doesn't matter what happens tomorrow.
If it happened week one,
oh, that's a different story.
be no question because he'd have an additional month to build.
Mm-hmm. But it's the time. The timing is going to be. I think if they get there, the timing is going to be a little too close for comfort, to the point where I know that I would say the docs would say like, "Nah, dude, you are not ready."
Well, yeah, I've seen crazy.
But it
things.
being the Super Bowl, and we know how sports are.
Yeah. Well, and you remember
'Cause
J.J. Watt come back from his pectoral tear. Remember how quick he did that?
Because it's one of those things. I mean, we saw Zetterberg do it for the Red Wings.
Yeah.
Back when he had those back problems,
Yep.
and they were in that series against Boston, and they were on the brink against Boston. He's like, "Screw this, I'm playing."
Yeah, and
then
athletes
look-
can will themselves
Yeah.
to victory for a short time. Like, obviously, that's not something you could do for a season,
We're talking literally
a game.
a Jello leg last week.
Yeah.
As far as an injury goes, so
I do know broken bones heal quicker. They do heal quicker than ligaments, but what?
my hand,
No, I'm like, what the hell are you doing?
my hand healed ahead of
Jazz
schedule.
hands or what? I didn't know what the hell you were doing.
Yeah, my
there.
hand healed ahead of schedule. So,
Well,
but
it's because
it's a hand, not a leg.
because you're young. That's because you're a young.
He's younger than me,
He is. I'm just saying, broken bones
and he's
heal
in hell of a lot better shape than I.
That is a fact.
So,
Neither one of us are in shape.
but
for
we'll jump to current AFC playoff picture.
shit. Mm-hmm.
Top two seeds that would get the bye would be Kansas City, Houston, which is kind of what we predicted at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
But this is where it gets a little different. Well, actually, you said Baltimore, but this is where it gets a little squirrely because I honestly thought Buffalo was going to take a step back, and I thought Miami
too.
was going to do some things because of how Miami did last year. I thought they were going to roll that momentum over.
Well, Tagovailoa being out's killing them.
But
obviously.
even before then, they were struggling.
Yeah, but I think they would have figured it out with him on the roster.
But
on the field. I'm
so
sorry.
Kansas City, Houston would be the top two with the byes, and then it would go Pittsburgh against Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers.
You know what? Again, have you watched? How many games of the Chargers have you watched or checked into this year?
Just caught highlights because obviously we're over here, so we don't get any coverage of them.
So, the Chargers to me look like Michigan West, as has been called that many times, right? But like they are literally building in the trenches, which is exactly what I would expect.
That's
God
just
forbid,
that's Harbaugh's.
I wish
coaching
Michigan
scheme.
would still do that. But
Michigan doesn't know what the hell to do right
they
now.
are
but
terrible.
we're not getting into that right now.
No, that'd take me the rest of the week. But and that's so. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm not that surprised. Like
Yeah.
everybody expected him to come in and kind of make that team better, and he has. I mean, the record at 3-2. Obviously, it's early, but there's no doubt in my mind that this team will be a playoff team, if not this year, next year for sure.
Can you imagine this matchup right here as a wild card matchup?
What?
Buffalo, Baltimore.
No,
That'd be a hell of a wild card matchup.
it would be actually, and
That's just like last year with Detroit Rams in that wild card matchup, where they stack up pretty similarly.
speaking of Rams, I was enlightened that my choice for Rams jerseys for one of my uniform combinations was subpar, according to some.
Yep.
And I just want to clarify that, first of all, don't hear your opinion, so you didn't give one. Second of all, there is nothing wrong with the Rams uniforms, first of all, but other than that, like it's a top 5 that to me is really like a top 10. You could sub any of the 5 below it and put them in up top. So, we're always going to be biased for our hometown guys, but man, it can be any of them. But I just wanted to point out that is something I was brought to my attention that may not have been the best pick.
So I just peeked over to my left here, and we got the Ravens and Bucks, which I've talked about this with a few people. The primetime games for the NFL this year have been horrible. The teams on them have been horrible.
Well, to be fair, though, they were good last year. They would have been good last year, right? So,
But
that's kind of what they
the
base
Jets
it off
have
of.
gotten like 3 or 4 already.
Well, the Jets were supposed to be just this freaking big thing.
Oh God! Just because it's Aaron Rodgers, the rest of the team sucks.
They're so bad. You know what's
But
nice, though?
I did just see a stat line.
Yeah.
John Harbaugh in his tenure as Baltimore's head coach is 40-18 record in primetime games.
The Harbaugh effect, man. Like, it's the same thing.
But this is a good matchup. So we got Baltimore, Tampa on Monday Night Football. That's a good matchup right there.
I like it.
And I need Godwin just to have
A
I
day.
don't need him to have a day, but I need him to have just a decent game. And I need who's in the other game?
The Chargers play the Cardinals tonight
Yeah,
as well.
it's Trey McBride. I need him to have just a meh game.
Oh, man.
I'm up quite a bit, but still.
I just want to rub it in.
No, I just want to win. So
I know that feeling. Speaking of that, how we do this weekend?
we actually got one.
We got one.
We
folks.
got one over
Goonie Tunes.
over Goonie Tunes, who are big supporters of our podcast, by the way,
Yes, they are.
because
Thanks a bunch,
they
guys.
had one of their own for a little bit, and it seems like they have retired it, but all good guys.
I'll tell you what, though, they buried this backhand yesterday. That was an
Yeah, you let
absolute shock.
Ty bury that back, posting in too.
I don't
You
want
had- You had two posting in on you.
Let me just clarify two things for you, Brett. First of all,
I was on the bench for both of them, so I didn't.
the particular one I'm referring to was a phenomenal shot. Like, to be fair,
I don't disagree.
I did not expect him to shoot it because the angle was tough. The
I
backhand on
agree.
top of that, I'm like, he's not shooting this, and he did, and then he put it top corner. I'm like, kudos to him for a good shot. But the other one kind of sucked. The other one kind of like I thought I played a good game yesterday overall.
You did play very well.
I think I played a good game yesterday. Kept us in the game. Was a little tired from the game prior, to that, but overall played fine. But that goal was, man, and it came to tie it, and I'm like, shit. Like we went up 3-1. They kind of came back and rumbled down two quicker goals.
Those two goals were actually by the two guys that actually do want to come on as guests at one point.
Well, not now, not after that garbage.
Connor and Ty.
But I've always enjoyed playing against those guys. The games are always good, and the sportsmanship's always good. And
did you see our game, man? It was just a hard fought game where there was some pushing and shoving and such.
Yeah,
and a little smack talk here and there. But that's the beauty of those games when we play against those guys. It's where it's just on the ice and that's it. And once that whistle blows, it's over. It's done.
That's where it should stay. I mean, it's it's easy to get riled up over it. I've certainly had my fair share of times. But they're not habitual offenders. In the sense that they're out
So that's why
acting like Goonie Tunes, right? That's not what they're doing.
Yeah.
So
that's why when stuff like that happens, you don't get riled up because it's not one of those. Oh, it's this shit again.
Now I'll do that with other teams in the league. That's for damn sure,
for sure.
But not this one. But yeah, it was a great game. We finally got a dub for once since. Thank God, between Wednesdays and Sundays, haven't been winning a lot. And so it was nice to get that monkey off the back.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can continue that trend. We also had a solid attendance for once. So
kind of.
that also helped. I mean, we had, 11?
Yeah.
So that's good for us because that's not been the trend lately. So
No. But, I mean, yeah, we did get the win. And it was a
gritty win.
fast-paced, hard game for sure.
it went right down to the wire. I mean, literally, we were fighting for that. The last 5 minutes specifically were specifically intense.
Yeah.
I mean, they put a lot of pressure on, really.
Mm-hmm.
But you guys really, I mean, I had some shots, in the last 5 minutes, but not a lot. Like, I had a lot of shots, maybe in some eyes, but they weren't quality shots, so I don't look at them the same. They allowed them to the outside, like a trickle-in kind of thing. You guys blocked it, whatever, and overall just solid play from everybody. The one real mess-up, Blake smoking Will in the face with a freaking shot in warm-ups. And then Will turns around and got creamed in the first 5 minutes of the game, right in the face again. So he's going to wear a cage.
Well, I know what was funny. It was actually very ironic because before the game, we were talking with one of our new guys, Mike, and he wears a visor.
Yeah.
And he made a comment of I think I'm the only guy in this team that wears a visor. I was like, no, Will wears one.
Yeah.
And what happens? Obviously, Will wears one in warm-ups, and then he wears one on the first or second shift.
Yeah.
It was just kind of ironic that we were talking about it prior to the game.
Yeah, I mean, he Blake just, didn't mean to, obviously, just kind of sauced a pass across
and
the
Will
ice.
broke a stick. He had a tough night.
He did have a tough night, but he
played
well.
very well.
He played
But as far as the
Yeah.
other stuff goes, he had a tough night.
He did, and that's, that happens. I mean, it's very very easy to do. I'm glad I've never broke a stick in that league for sure.
Right. I totally have never seen you go over the crossbar with it.
Nope. That doesn't
Never.
happen. Nope, doesn't happen. So, good for Will. Good for Will to keep it under control. So yeah, I mean, it was a really good victory.
Mhm.
Solid.
Speaking of hockey, you want to dapple into our local NHL team?
Sure.
So, I don't know how much we talked about them last week. We got started the season last week. Tough start with that abysmal effort against the Penguins. But then they did come back with a 3-0 victory over the Predators, who are supposed to be a better team. But they're off to a very rough start now, too.
0-5.
Yeah. And then it sucks he had a home and home against the Rangers, who are going to be one of the top dogs this year, and the Rangers definitely looked all of top dog.
Yeah, both times. And we think we said this before, but like, you gotta beat those teams though.
Yes, agreed.
I mean, at the end of the day, like it's nice to say, okay, they're a top dog team, but like if you're gonna elevate yourself, you're gonna have to steal some games against those teams, or at least show that you're contending, and like they just didn't. Sure. Yeah, as far as Red Wings go, I mean, I think I don't know, this team is TBD. Like they played Nashville's a good team, right, to an extent. I mean, they should be, at least on paper. They're 0-5. But, like we alluded to yesterday, I mean, Avalanche are, 1-4?
Mm-hmm.
So there's some good teams out there that are not doing so hot, and I fully expect them to turn it around. And honestly, I expected Nashville to compete for a playoff spot this year, and I still think they will.
Yes.
As we've seen, it's hard to come out of those ruts, or better yet, like it's hard to come out of those, early season slumps. I'd rather do it early though than do it in March, like the Red Wings decided to do last year.
Mm-hmm.
So at least you got some time to recover and play some hot hockey and see what happens. But I'm not impressed with this team with another year of growth under Lalonde. I mean, do I think he can do it? I think he can. I think he can because I think if Yzerman believes in him, there's something there. But I'm starting to get skeptical if he's the right dude. Do I think that a Gallant is the right coach? I don't know. Do I think Quenneville's the right coach? I don't know. Like, it doesn't matter what name you throw out there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, do they almost need, like, and dare I say the name, and I'm not here to say that he's the guy, but like a Patrick Waugh type of guy that.
Can you imagine him?
But no,
the Red Wings
he's never
bench?
going to be here. But like, I'm
No.
talking about a guy that's literally going to light a fire under their ass and say, listen, this is our time. Like, we've got the prospect pool. We've got the talent on ice.
Mm-hmm.
The defensive core to me is still a little, I'm not sure. But, is that the kind of coach we need? Because Lalonde to me seems like a very carefree, not a screamer.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't seem like that. And I'm not saying that's what every team needs, but.
And we don't know what goes on
is he
behind
too
closed
relaxed?
doors. We have no idea. Like,
Yeah.
there's never been any indication of, well, this went on in the closed meeting or whatever. We
Yeah.
never hear anything about how Lalonde got in their ass or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but my biggest thing so far through the first 5 games is that they have looked like the inferior team every single game.
But the shot totals don't say that. Like if you look at shot totals, like they've been right there. Like even the game they lost to the Rangers 5-2, they gave up 3 power play goals.
They looked bad.
Their special teams are terrible. But like
Yes.
again, if you look at shot totals, they're right up there, right? Like if you were to look at it from afar, you'd be like, man, a couple of bad penalties and they probably don't lose this game. But really, like you watch them play and you're like, oh no shit, no wonder they lost the game. But it's just weird. Like in years past, their shot totals have been wildly outnumbered.
Yeah.
If you remember, like they might win games, but they were outshot 20-40. Like, and now they're getting the shot totals more even, and they're losing 5-2. It's like, but one thing this team did really well last year was power play.
Yeah.
Gosh Despair was a big help. He really was, and the personnel they had may have been a difference. Like I didn't like Perron. We talked about that, but he was solid in the
corners along the boards.
The boards,
His
and like
puck
that
retrieval.
veteran mindset.
And his puck retrieval is very.
Other
very
than
good.
that, he really wasn't useful for anything other than that. But again, it's 5 games in, right? Like we played 5 games.
It is still October.
Yeah, we got a lot of time to figure things out. I guess I expected them to come out a little more prepared.
Yeah.
And do I expect them to be 5-0? Absolutely not. I don't expect that at all. They look unprepared to me. They look like they didn't grow over the offseason. They don't look hungry. And I expected that from a team that's trying to make the playoffs, a young team that Yzerman's put together. I expect them to be hungrier than they've shown. That's all.
To go with your power play thing, the power play has looked abysmal. And you still have Gustafsson running that power play 1 at the point. It's just like, why? He has not looked good whatsoever.
No.
In any aspect of his game.
Sadly enough.
He has not looked good at all. So why isn't Seider on that? Why isn't he? Because Seider has proven that he can do that.
He can't play everywhere, though. That's the problem.
But
they don't
still,
have other guys.
But they have him on the power play too.
Yeah, but there's
So
reason for that.
why?
Though.
So I don't know.
And
But
they
then why
interchange
don't?
those guys
And
a
then
lot
why?
too, if you think about it, with
And the,
line changes and stuff.
but at this point, why don't you give Evanson a shot at it?
Sure,
Why
I'm
not?
not
Because
disagreeing with that.
Evanson has shown that he's good at keeping the puck in at the blue line, and he makes smart decisions with the said puck at the blue line.
Make some rookie-ish mistakes, typically like he might over pursue a little or something, which can get you burned on a penalty kill.
But I've seen him jump in the play
Power
at the
play's
right
different.
times for sure.
Yeah, listen, his hockey IQ is good. Like,
Yes.
he's got, again, he's a young player. He's gonna make some mistakes. They all do. But if I'm like, we've talked about this before. Do you know how frustrating it is when a line combination goes out and has a great game,
And
and then your coach breaks it up the next game, and you're like, how am I supposed to build any chemistry?
I was just about to bring something.
And I feel like that's a lot of what this team missed last year. What a lot of this team is missing already this year is like lineup combinations. And starting Husso game 1, stupid.
Yeah, that was wild.
Stupid. He didn't play for a whole half a season. And I don't care how good of an offseason or preseason he had, he had one preseason game, 2 preseason games?
Something like that.
Played very well in one of them, and that's fine. I play good every now and then, but I'm not good. So it's like, to start him week 1, I think showed the team that you didn't learn anything.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. Like, if you go out and ride the hot hand, you go with Lyon. He's the one that got you there. My honest opinion is he's the goalie that helped get you there. That shows a little bit of, okay, let's try and build. Putting Husso out there says you're ready to go backwards, in my opinion. I'm not here to knock on Husso, man. It's just you haven't played a lot of hockey, and you haven't played a lot of good hockey.
Yeah. Even before he got injured last year, he was not playing well.
No.
So
he started the year really well.
And
he fell off.
But yeah, going to the lineup combinations like you were talking about is Albert Johansson.
Mm-hmm.
The couple games he's got slotted in, he looked pretty damn good back there.
Definitely useful.
But then the second Petrie's ready to go, he takes his ass out of the lineup. Puts Gustafsson back in. Gustafsson has been horrible these first 5 games. And I know you got to try to work him out. Try to find the kinks. Try to just – because obviously it is Gustafsson's first year with this team, so he's still just trying to find his footing. So I understand that. But – and then yet you throw Petrie back in there, and Petrie's just doing Petrie things when he's an all-star defenseman back there, all sarcasm aside.
Yeah, no thanks.
And then even Sherratt's had a tough start to the year where he's looked quite a bit lost. And really – and then –
And you got Hole there, too, to replace him.
But even Hole's looked serviceable, more serviceable than the ones I just named.
If he's your most serviceable option, we're in a load of trouble this year.
But then,
that's just
like you said, Evanson has, of course, made some rookie mistakes and such.
Sure.
But at the same
you've
time,
got 2 foundational
But at the same
defensemen.
time, he does a hell of a lot more good than bad.
You've got 2 foundational, in my opinion. You have 2 guys you can build around on defense, and Sider being obvious.
And Sider's had a good start to the year.
And Evanson, I think, is another guy you can build around. The rest of these guys, in my opinion, are freaking interchangeable, and they could go anywhere. To me, what really hurts is losing Wallman on defense. I'm gonna say it.
That's really
shows so much because
agree.
that he played with a level of tenacity. He played with a level of heart, and even he was caught off guard. He doesn't feel like that was warranted. I think we gave him a lot of playing time and experience here from his trade from St. Louis, and that was kind of a trade that surprised me. I understand why Yzerman did it.
It was a cap dump.
It was a business decision, and we needed the cap space for the 2 deals.
You couldn't have done that to anyone. You couldn't have offloaded Mata.
Come on.
You couldn't offload Mata.
Ben
Mata
Sherratt.
makes more than him.
Get rid of Sherratt then. If that's what it came down to.
I was looking at equivalent contracts. I think Mata made more than Wallman.
Yeah, I think he's at $2 million a year.
I think Wallman's only like 3 or 4.
3.5, 4. So Sherratt is an equal contract, 4 to 4.5, whatever he's at.
But nobody's gonna take that on.
But you buy him out and spread it out.
But then I don't know.
Or trade him for a low pick. Somebody would have taken him for a 5th rounder. I guarantee it. You could have cleared the space and kept Wallman. Again, he's not the savior here. It's just you need guys like him on your team, and they traded him for nothing.
But one bright side to this is they did bring up Marco Kasper.
He looks good.
And they have said numerous times that if he gets brought up, he's staying a while.
Mm-hmm.
And he got slotted in Saturday against the Preds and looked damn good.
Definitely.
He was on a line with Berggren and Rasmussen. I thought that was a good combination for him. And he ended up getting an assist, his first career point.
I got an assist this weekend.
You did.
I got an assist this weekend, guys.
The fact that Darryl didn't blow that whistle quick enough.
I read the play the whole time,
you
though.
did.
Like, I really
did. But I thought he was going to blow the whistle when those 2 guys were going in on him.
Yeah, it was a power play. We were on 5-on-4, and they had two of their defenders that came after me while I was covering the puck, and so I just shot it between them, quite frankly, and passed it up to, I don't remember who caught the pass,
I don't remember.
but it got over to a guy, and he ended up burying it and tied the game, and it was great. First apple of the year, probably the last one.
But yeah, so I really hope that they do keep Casper up for a while, and because he definitely showed that he belongs on this team. I mean, he showed it in the preseason, and then you slot him in for one game, and he looks very comfortable out there.
Yeah, but like, there's probably 5 guys in Grand Rapids today that could play on this team tomorrow.
No, I 1,000% agree. But Casper's, I think of all of them, Casper's the one you want up. Casper's the one you want getting those reps.
He's a little
at
bigger.
The moment.
He's a little bigger too, compared to like Danielson, right? Who's another one you'd probably argue could be up to. But does Casper looks a little more mature? Well, looks a little bit more mature. Skates a little more poised. And I'm not here to knock on Danielson
He
at
has
all.
some grit to his game.
Yeah, so I think he's the better fit right now. If you were looking for a guy to go on third and fourth line with a little scoring touch,
he's perfect opportunity.
That's probably the best guy to do it.
And then say his game starts elevating more and more, the more confidence he gets, then you maybe slot him up at the second center with Kane and Raymond, or DeBrincat, whoever's on that second line with them, and then you bring Comfort down a little bit, maybe. Who knows?
Well,
see how he works up in the top 6.
Who does him coming up remind you of though? A couple years back, who's he remind you of? Anybody taking a guess?
How far back are we talking?
The last, I think it's been 5 years probably.
Like coming up from Grand Rapids and having a good season.
Okay, well, I'll just give it away because you're probably not going to guess anyway. He reminds me of a lot of a Joe Veleno situation, and I'm going to tell you why. I think Casper is going to end up being a better player offensively.
Yes.
Now, Joe Veleno in junior hockey got exceptional status.
Yeah, he was
right.
He was very good.
Very, very good. But it did not translate. It did not. And I think, obviously, the game got harder. The guys got stronger, faster, all the things that happen to a lot of young players. But he didn't really find the scoring touch. Now, granted, he's picked it up a little bit recently. Casper reminds me a lot of that, in the sense that, like, he's not been exceptional status per se, but, like, he's been really solid down there. But he reminds me of a guy who's going to come up like Joe Veleno. He's going to come up and he's not going to impress you on the stat sheet for the first year.
But he's going to play hard.
He's going to play hard. He's going to play solid, and he's going to win some draws, right? Or whatever the case is.
It's going to be hard to take him out of the lineup.
It's going to be hard to take him out of the lineup, and then you're going to start to see in year 2 and year 3, maybe he starts to build on that offensive game. And that just kind of gives me that vibe. Again, I'm not comparing the two necessarily. It's just he gives me that kind of vibe.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I can definitely see what you're saying, but I don't know. It's been a rough start to the year so far. But like we were saying, it is only October, so we still got a lot of time. You can't make the playoffs in October, but you could in October and November, but you could definitely lose them. So hopefully they at least get in a better direction.
Yeah.
Come now that we're transitioning into November.
Well, yeah, and I think if you see these issues here, in like November and December, we may have a problem.
Oh, we're gonna have a big problem.
We may have a real problem. And this team, I mean, obviously, as we've kind of talked about, like, they're not going to blow you away with talent. Okay, they're just not. But they have enough. They have enough talent on this team to do some damage.
Yeah.
But they got to play. They got to play hard. They got to play together. And aside from injuries derailing the season, I think they can do that. They just
they need to find that mojo again that they had.
They do.
And
they need to find that purpose. They really need to find the purpose like the Lions have found.
And
they
obviously haven't had it to start this year so far. So
yeah.
But I think that's going to wrap us up for this week. We've had a pretty long episode here talking about Lions and NFL. Lions are now top of the NFC.
Top dogs.
We talked about a little bit about our first beer league win.
We got 7 games in.
No.
Between the 2 leagues I play on 7 games in.
Okay. I was going to say we're only 4 games in.
Yeah. Well.
And then talked a little about the Red Wings struggles to start the year, but they had a big win on Saturday, so hopefully that. And then they're in the Island tomorrow, facing said Patrick Waugh and the Islanders.
Yeah.
So
he's not going to coach here. I don't want.
No, that'd be so wild.
I don't want him.
That would be wild. But yeah. So we're gonna wrap it up for this week, and we will talk to you guys on Friday. So thank you all for tuning in. I am Brett with 2 T's.
I am Brett with one T and the better one, obviously.
All right, we'll see you guys on Friday.
Peace out.